The first time I sat down at an Aussie school assembly, I cried. Like actual tears. In a plastic chair, next to a dad in a hi-vis vest who looked at me sideways and just went, "Yeah, gets you, doesn't it?" And mate, I'd been in the country less than a year. So here's what I want to do. I want to walk you through the 7 things American parents, me, the missus, 2 of our mates from back home who came to visit, noticed in the first 10 minutes of an Aussie primary school assembly. Things that, honestly, do not exist back in the States. Not even close. And there's one moment near the end, about 42 minutes in, where a 6-year-old kid in a school hat walked up to a microphone and said something that made every American parent in that hall go completely still. I'll get to it, but I want you to keep that in your head while we go. A 6-year-old, a microphone, and a sentence I have never heard a child say in America. Ever. Okay, so, context. Quick. My daughter started year 1 at a public school here. Public, not private, not selective, not the fancy one down the road. Just the local school, the one zoned to our house, the one where you walk past the Newcastle brick fence and a row of gum trees, and there's a sign that says slow, children crossing, in that very specific Aussie shade of yellow. And look, I'd done American school assemblies. Plenty. I went to one in Ohio, my niece's, in 2019. I remember the metal detectors. I remember the sign-in iPad. I remember the security guard. Lovely bloke, by the way, but still a security guard. At a kindergarten. So when my missus said the assembly's at 9, just walk in, I said, walk in where? And she goes, the hall. Just walk in. And I'm telling you, that small sentence broke something in my American brain. Because what I saw in that hall over the next hour told me more about Australia than any documentary ever has. First thing, there's no sign-in. There's no badge. There's no buzzer. There's a lady at a folding table. Her name was Jenny. I'll never forget Jenny. And Jenny just goes, "Oh, you must be Stella's dad. Come in. Tea's over there." Yeah, there was tea. At a school assembly. At 9 in the morning. With a plate of iced VoVos that someone's nan had clearly brought in. I mean, I stood there holding a biscuit like a confused American tourist and a granddad next to me. Steve. Turns out his name was Steve, grandkid in year 3. Steve just nods at me and goes, "First one, mate." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You'll be right. You'll be right." 3 words. That's the whole vibe of an Aussie school. You'll be right. Second thing, and this is going to sound stupid, but every single kid had a hat. Every single one. Wide brim. Floppy. School colors. And I'm sitting there going, why does this feel like a small army of tiny park rangers? And then I clocked it. It's the no hat, no play rule. UV's brutal here. The school doesn't ask. The school enforces it. And the parents are grateful because, well, the Aussie melanoma rate is what it is, and we'll get to that in a second. But here's the bit that gets me. In America, we'd argue about it. We'd have a school board meeting. Someone's mom would write a letter. Someone would call it government overreach. Here, the kids just wear the hats. And the hats have the school crest on them. And honestly, they look adorable. Fight me. Open loop number 2, 3:30 mark. Now, I told you about the microphone moment. I haven't forgotten. That's still coming. But before that, there was a different moment, about 20 minutes in, when the principal stood up and said one word that made every Aussie parent in the room nod and every American parent freeze. One word. I'll tell you what it was in a minute. Third thing, the shoes. The kids wear black leather school shoes. Polished. Or close to it. And this is going to sound minor. It isn't. Because in America, my niece in Ohio wore light-up sneakers to her assembly. Cute, sure. But there's something about a hall full of kids in proper shoes and proper hats and a proper uniform that makes you realize, okay, this is a school. Not a daycare with homework. A school, right? So 20 minutes in, the principal, lovely woman, Mrs. Patterson, glasses on a chain, the whole thing. She stands up and she does what every Aussie school does at the start of an assembly. She acknowledges country. And the word she used was elders. She said, "We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging." And mate, the room went quiet. Not awkward quiet, reverent quiet. 6-year-olds, standing still, heads slightly bowed. like they'd done it 100 times because they had. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not going to pretend Australia has its history with First Nations people sorted. It doesn't. Nobody's saying that. But, and this is the bit I want my American friends to hear, the acknowledgement of it in a public school, in front of children, every single morning in a country where 73% of the population isn't indigenous? That doesn't happen in America. We don't acknowledge anything. We pledge allegiance to a flag. That's it. That's the whole thing. I had to look this up because I didn't believe it, but yeah, every public school in New South Wales does it. Every single one, according to the New South Wales Department of Education guidance. Here's the fifth thing, and this is the one that did me in. The principal got up and she gave a speech. 3 minutes, maybe 4. And I sat there, American brain ticking, waiting for the part where she talks about test scores, or rankings, or our excellent academic performance, or that one kid who got into the gifted program. It never came. She talked about kindness. She talked about a year 2 boy who'd helped a kindy kid find her water bottle. She talked about the canteen ladies. She talked about a teacher who was retiring after 31 years and the kids had made her a card. And she said, and I wrote this down on the back of the program, I've still got it. She said, we don't measure this school by what our students achieve. We measure it by who they become. I'm an American. I have been to American school assemblies my entire life. I have never heard a principal say that. Ever. Our schools are about achievement, about ranking, about getting into the next school, about the SATs, about the trophy cabinet. Here, it was about the kid who found the water bottle. I sat there, just sat there, and the missus put her hand on my knee because she could tell I was going somewhere with it. Look, Aussie parents watching this, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, well, Yema, our schools have problems too. Mate, don't get carried away. And you're right. They do. The PISA scores have slipped. There's the funding fight between public and private. The teacher shortage is real. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm saying the culture in that hall was something I have never felt in an American school. And I went to a good American school. If you're an Aussie parent or a grandparent, especially a grandparent, and you've sat in one of those halls with a coffee and a paper cup watching your grandkid stand up there in a school hat, hit subscribe. Not for me, for the channel. Because this whole channel is built on one idea, that this country quietly does 100 things better than the rest of the world. And most Aussies don't even realize it because they grew up in it. Send this video to the mate who needs reminding what we've got here. That's it. That's the ask. Okay, sixth thing. Small one. But it stuck. The teachers, when they spoke to each other, used first names. Thanks, Sarah. Over to you, Mike. Not Mrs. Henderson. Not Mr. Thompson. Sarah and Mike. And again, sounds tiny. Isn't. Because the kids picked up on it. The kids could see that the teachers were people. Adults who liked each other. Who joked with each other. Who weren't standing in some American-style hierarchy of formality. And one of the visiting American moms, Christine, my wife's friend from college, was over for 2 weeks. Christine leaned over to me and went, the teachers seem happy? Like it was a question. Like she'd never considered it before. And I went, yeah, they do. Because they get paid properly. Median teacher salary in New South Wales is around $113,000 after 8 years. In Ohio, it's about $65,000 US after a decade. Different currency, sure, but the respect is different too. Teaching here is a profession, not a calling you guilt people into. Seventh, the canteen menu was on the wall, and I read it because I'm nosy. And here's what was on it: sushi rolls, chicken and salad wraps, fruit cups, and a thing called a Zooper Duper, which I had to ask about, and which turned out to be an ice block in a plastic tube, and is apparently the single most important food group for Aussie children under the age of 10. But here's the bit. There was no soda, no frias, no nachos, no giant cookies. I'm not saying Aussie kids eat perfectly. They don't. They get sausage rolls and they love them. But the default at school was different. The default was healthy. The default at my niece's school in Ohio was a vending machine. Okay, the microphone. About 42 minutes in, they did awards. Not academic awards, values awards. Kindness, respect, perseverance, that sort of thing. And one of the kids called up was a little fella in year 1. 6 years old. mop of blonde hair, school hat in his hand because they'd made him take it off inside. He walked up to the microphone. The principal lowered it for him, and he was supposed to just say thank you and sit down. But he didn't. He looked out at the hall, at all of us, all the parents and grandparents and the dads and hi-vis and the mums with prams, and he said very clearly into the microphone, I want to thank my teacher, Miss Davies, because she helped me when I was sad about my dog. And then he sat down. And I don't know how to say this without sounding dramatic, but every American parent in that room, me, my Mrs. Christine's husband, Brad, we all had the same look on our face. Because in America, that kid would have said, thanks, Mom and Dad, for buying me the iPad. Or, thanks, Coach, for the trophy. He would have thanked an achievement. This kid thanked a teacher for helping him with his feelings. About his dog, 6 years old. The granddad next to me, Steve just exhaled through his nose and said, good kid, that one. Like it was nothing. Like that's just what kids do here. But it isn't. Not everywhere. Not where I'm from. I can still see that hall. The smell of eucalyptus coming through the open windows because they don't air condition Aussie school halls. They just open the windows and let the breeze do its thing. The sound of kids' shoes scuffing on the wooden floor. The cold metal of the chair I was sitting in. A flag. Aussie flag, Aboriginal flag, Torres Strait Islander flag. 3 of them hanging up the front. Together. So, back to the promise. 7 things. American parents. First 10 minutes. No security theater. Hats on every kid. Proper school shoes. An acknowledgement of country. A principal who measured the school by who kids become. Teachers using first names. A canteen with sushi rolls instead of soda. And what those 7 things added up to, for me, for Christine, for Brad, for the missus, was one feeling. A feeling I hadn't had in an American school in 25 years. Trust. The school trusted the kids. The kids trusted the teachers. The teachers trusted the parents. The parents trusted the school. There were no metal detectors because there was no fear. There was no sign-in iPad because nobody assumed the worst. There was no security guard because the community was the security. And honestly, I reckon most Americans would hate hearing this because deep down, they know we've lost something they have here. We argue about it. We put up signs. We hire consultants. They just have it, built into the floorboards of a public school hall in Newcastle. Aussie parents watching this, tell me if I got it wrong. Maybe I went to the one good school. Maybe my school was the unicorn. Comments are open. I want to hear it, especially the grandparents. What was your kid's school assembly like in 1972? Was the trust always there, or did Australia build it? I genuinely don't know. Tell me. And look, I'll admit something. When I first moved here, I thought Aussie schools were going to be behind American ones. That's the American brain talking. We're told our system is the best. We rank everything. We measure everything. We assumed if it wasn't us, it wasn't world class. I was wrong. Flat wrong. And I needed an assembly in a hall with a 6-year-old at a microphone to figure that. When the assembly finished, my daughter ran over. School hat in one hand, a little paper certificate in the other. She got a kindness award for sharing her coloring pencils with a kid called Hamish. And she looked up at me and went, Dad, did you see me? And I said, yeah, I saw you, sweetheart. I saw all of you. And we walked out into the car park, and Steve waved at me from across the lot, the granddad. And he just gave me a thumbs up. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. My daughter's going to grow up in this. She's going to grow up in a country where her principal measures the school by who the kids become, where the teachers have her back, where a 6-year-old can stand at a microphone and talk about being sad without anyone laughing, and where the bloke in the hi-vis next to me at the next assembly will probably hand me a biscuit and say, first one, mate. And I'll get to be the one who says, nah, not anymore. Soft CTA to related video. If this hit you, and I have a feeling it hit some of you, I did a video a while back about the difference between Aussie hospitals and American ones. Same vibe, same gut punch. I'll leave it for you up the road. That kid with the microphone, 6 years old, thanking his teacher about a dog. I think about him a lot.